I'm Miwa Messer. I'm the producer and host of Poured Over, and it is my great good fortune to be with all of you on the Upper West Side and Molly Jong-Fast. And true story, and I do not, 500 something episodes in, and I do not ever get to say this until tonight. I actually met Molly when she was 14 years old and had a throwdown with her mother in my office in my bookstore in Chicago.
Yes.
And it was for the Henry Miller bio.
Yeah.
And I felt so bad for you because I was like, the last thing this 14-year-old needs to be is in a basement office in a bookstore in Chicago with her mom being full-on mama. All props to your mom. But it was, you were 14 and I was dying for you. I was also dying for me because I grew up in Boston and we don't do that.
Yes.
That's why gin was invented. We just sit quietly in the corner and go, what is happening? Why is this happening?
One of the great things with my husband was my mother. When he first met me, we first got together, I was young, and he met my mother, and he was like, my mother was like, said to my stepfather, I'm going to divorce you. And my husband looked ashen and was like, oh, she's going to divorce him. And I was like, no, she says that all the time. And he was like, who communicates like this? And I was like, you're not Jewish? I was like, this is what we do.
All I know is it wasn't a Boston thing. And I was like, do I climb under my desk now?
Yes.
Or do I let it blow over? And I couldn't, I mean, when you're an adolescent, it's hard enough to be around your parents. And then you add fame into it. And it's like, oh.
Yeah.
Oy.
Well, I do think, like, I did grow up, and I have a cousin. I have actually a number of cousins here, but one of my cousins who I grew up with, there was a high level of, like, verbal fighting on the street with in our I mean, that was not, like, limited
I envy you. I envy.
Yeah. I'm not sure you should.
No, we just sat and stewed. Like, you could feel, like, the rage vibrate off of us very quietly.
It's a different
sometimes
mentality.
it's just nice to, like, let fly. Because also, you're never going to see the people on the sidewalk ever again.
I don't know. I have to say, like, once I got my husband was like, no, I can't do this. And I was like, okay, it's fine.
I will say, I the factory presets are the factory presets.
That's right.
And I just...
That's right.
I do that thing where it feels like there's an ice cube in the room. Yeah. It's great. But more importantly, you have written a gorgeous, beautiful book about grief and motherhood and moms and complicated parents. And, when you're a bookseller, you get to read a lot.
Oh, I bet.
And sometimes you get to finish stuff, and sometimes you get to say, oh, I'm really glad this book is in the world, and I am really glad this book is in the world. I think you've done a really important thing here. And we're all sort of at a stage in our lives, right, where parents are complicated.
Yeah.
You've got complicated kids. I've never met your husband, and I was so invested in his cancer scans.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. I needed Matt to be okay. I still haven't met this dude. It's fine. But, like, this is how invested I was in this book. But I was also one of these women who, I was very, very tiny when Fear of Flying came out. But it was one of those books that everyone's mom but my mom had. And we all sort of encountered probably a little younger than we might otherwise have, because it was one of those moments, right, where everyone had the same book, right? Like, books were actually mass culture in a way that they are not currently. I just remember thinking, I hope I never have to talk about this book with my mom ever in my lifetime. And 90 pounds soaking wet, like, tiny Asian woman who lived in, we were never going to talk about this book. But she's your mom, man. She's your mom.
I mean, yeah, not great. But also great. I mean, what's cool, so I have a number of thoughts about my mom. And one of which is that she had this incredible experience of writing this book that was a sort of seminal text. And I was so... And she got to sort of matter, right? Don't we all want to matter? And also, it was incredibly hard for her. And I think, like, one of the things I think about a lot was she was born in 1942. She was not born in when I was born in 1978, Roe v. Wade had already been, the law of the land for 5 years. The birth control pill had been around for 15 years. Women were on this sort of edge of independence. When my mother was born, it was like, World War II.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And so what I think a lot about with this book is, like, how so much of what we take for, or at least what I take for granted as a 46-year-old woman, is very new. And I do think like my mom was sort of catapulted into this world of second wave feminism, which was very important in a lot of ways, but she was not equipped for that.
Right.
Because she did not grow up in a world where, like, one of the amazing things that my mother did for me as a mother was that she really did believe that I could do anything.
Yeah.
Despite the fact that I was like very dyslexic, had been counseled out of Dalton, all the evidence said this is not a person who can do anything. And my mother would be like, you can do anything. And I'd be like, maybe I can. And there was no evidence to support that, but I did. And so, I was on TV this morning and I was saying, like, I would not be anywhere without my mother. I wouldn't be sitting here without my mother. And I thought, oh God, they're going to clip this there's this thing called Grey Brion. And like the far right will clip me sometimes. It'll go on Grey Brion. It'll end up on like an RNC clip reel. And you'll be like, oh, Jesus. And you'll get like these, you'll know because you'll start getting these like weird messages or notifications. And I thought, oh, they're going to clip me saying that I wouldn't get. And I said, well, partially because of the nepotism, which is not untrue and it's fine to acknowledge. And then partially because she did give me this suspension of disbelief, and they haven't put me on Grey Brion. I don't think Grey Brion really cares about like memoirs about mothers. The alt-right is not so excited.
I think the conversation would be really different if we were talking about Eric Jong.
Yes.
The way we talk about women and ambition and women and success. I mean, I was explaining to a younger colleague before we were setting up the event where I was like, your mother was on Carson. Like, there was a level of fame that went with Updike and your mom. Like, Dick Cavett was a thing, right?
But
like, it was mass culture in a way that we don't really have mass culture anymore.
Okay, yes, but
I hear a butt coming.
This is true. Like, we could, but there were also, like, and again, Norman Mailer.
Oh, God.
Right? Like, that guy was like the king. And every book he wrote was a bestseller, and it was in The New Yorker, and it was in this, and it was in that.
Was Ancient Evenings a bestseller?
So many of his books, not all of them, but, he would make a gazillion dollars, and he was like the king.
Yeah.
And, photographers would chase him around, and he, like, not a feminist icon, that guy.
Nope.
And so I do think, there are parts in which, look, we are in a weird rabbit hole at this moment, but there's there were such strong gatekeepers, and so few people got through those gates. And most of them were white men who wrote about the white male experience in a very specific kind of way that was not so open for the rest of us.
And I read a lot of Cheever and Updike as guides to my dad. I was trying to figure him out. I was like, oh, this feels like a guide, but this feels like I could learn something. I was not necessarily wrong.
Yeah.
But again, literature is pop culture, right?
Right.
Like, it was a totally different universe. And your mom is complex. She has her Erica things about her and whatnot. But to grow up with that level of fame is weird.
I don't know. I don't think it was so bad. I actually think, like, sometimes people would recognize her. A lot of times people wouldn't. I have seen people where they can't go to, like, the grocery store. I don't think, like, this is the right. That was sort of not so bad.
Okay.
I think more that the alcohol. There were other problems that made things much worse. But what I would say is the experience that I wanted to write about was this experience of having elderly parents who you want desperately to be there for, but having, like, all of these other elements that you cannot manage, and then having these teenage, like, this being in this sandwich generation where you have to be there for them, there for the boomers who, by the way, then I'm, like, writing about, and I'm, with politics, and I'm like, oh, come on, and I'm very, we have, like, almost no Generation X. It's not true. We have some Generation X politicians, and some of them are bad. But, where I was sort of just stuck in this world of, like, mothers and children.
Right.
And also work. And that's what I wanted to convey. And that was, like, the larger message of this book is not so much it's hard to be Erica Jong's daughter, who cares? It's more like it is hard to be a person in this moment, to have these parents and children and to want to show up for them. And I also feel like what I want you to get from this book is that it's okay. Like, it doesn't have to be, you could do the best you can and that's okay.
I love the fact that all of these details, right? And how many of you have already read the book? I mean, it's been, okay, right?
It's very short, right? It's readable.
It's delightfully short.
Kara Price, who is a very smart reader and editor, said, and I can say this because we're both Jewish, that it's a Jewish beach read. Like, it reads very fast, but there's a lot of, like, death and illness, but it's funny, right? So that's good.
But you're really funny.
Because it's
You're really funny, but also more importantly, the details are what I got stuck on.
Right.
And I was describing the book to a friend, and I was like, it's one thing to have a narcissistic parent, but when you can do it in private, that's way better.
Yeah.
Because I think we're all in a place where parents get complicated.
Yeah. I mean, I also
Parents get really complicated.
Right. I also think we're all just doing our best. And like with my mom, she worked so hard. And like her mother was so mean and so like shockingly mean. I have a cousin here who can attest to our grandmother being really like shockingly mean. And then my mother was incredibly kind. So imagine how hard that had to have been. There were like amazing things she pulled off that were, the kind of thing you had to just sort of summons all your gumption to be able to do.
Right.
So I give her, and I think that she really did in a lot of ways an incredible thing. But I really wanted you to be able to sort of connect with the story and not, like, to be able to read this book and not be related to someone who's a feminist writer, but still feel that you have had the experience of being related. No, I'm just kidding.
But you've got 3 kids. You've got a husband who is ailing.
Yes.
We need to talk about Matt for a second because...
Or Matt. He's not even here. But luckily, some of his relatives are here, so hopefully they'll tell.
Well, and also you wrote about him, so he is fair game.
Yes, he was, by the way, I have to say, like, this poor guy had really been through it because my mother had written this book in Fear of Dying. One of my kids is egging me on here. Fear of Dying, where my poor husband had been like this sort of, it was not a flattering portrayal.
Right.
And so I felt for him and I said, you marry into this family, it's going to be what it is, man. Like, there are not great choices out there. And then when he got sick, I was like, I'm sorry, I'm going to have to write about you having cancer. And he was like, oh, God. And he's like a private person. He's not like a TV pundit or a writer. He's like a normal person in the world. Like, I always say he's like a real person. And so he is a real person. So I did feel slightly bad about completely writing about this thing. And he started reading. So my daughter read the book and she was like, it's really good. I really like it. And I feel really bad for you. And I was like, yes. And then I was like, I don't know that I want her to feel bad for me, but okay. And then my husband started reading and he's like, I smell. And I was like, you had cancer. And he was like, I smell. And I was like, you really are stuck on this? I was like, you had cancer. He was like, I smelled because I was in the hospital. I was like, why do you care why you smelled when you had cancer? And then he stopped reading it because he was like mad about the smell thing. And I was like, okay. And then he went back. And then finally my editor was like, I think you should read it. So we make sure that, and finally he read it. He was like, oh, okay. He was like grudgingly, like, it's actually really good. And he can be, because he is like, was an academic, he actually can be quite judgmental.
He's cranky.
He'll be like I'll write pieces and he'll be like, oh, I wish it had been a little more interesting. He'll say, well, it's not a very original thesis. And I'll be like, and then he'll read our daughter's stuff and he'll be like, oh, she's really good. And I'm like, she's 17. I'm like, I've been doing this a lot longer than she has. And he's like, yes, but she really understands Sontag. I'll be like, okay.
Wait, a 17-year-old really understands
Well,
Sontag?
they're very nerdy, my husband and daughter.
I am a total pagan baby. I mean, opera, Sondheim, I can do books.
I mean,
I can do books.
Well, what, I shouldn't say this because I don't want to, like, dime out my kids here, but I have one kid who's really a lot like me, and then 2 kids who are really a lot like my husband.
Okay.
And my husband's very brainy, wasn't intellectual, was an academic. And so my kid who's like me and I went on a trip, And I said, what are you guys going to do while we're gone? And he said, smart people activities. And he said, we're going to go to the opera, we're going to see plays, we're going to do smart people stuff. Yeah. So that's what we're dealing with.
We can hang in the corner and be pagan babies. I'm down with that.
Listen,
I mean,
man,
I know books.
We'll go to the movies.
I do want to bring in an audience question. This is a really great question, and it's actually for the audience. How many of us got a caretaker to stay with mom tonight so we could come to this event?
Oh, yay, I love you.
I mean, that's not nothing. I just, out of curiosity, I mean, it's really weird when you end up being the caretaker for your parent, right? Like you're parenting your parent and you're like, how did this happen?
But it's like the best case scenario, right? Because the other choice is just like your parents bury you, which is the nightmare, or they die too young, which is also the nightmare. I mean, this is like that's the thing is we get to have this moment with our parents, and and it can be what it is. But I do think it's it's beautiful and meaningful and important. I think anyway. I hope everyone agrees with me, because if they don't,
well, actually, given some of these questions, they do. Because I'm gonna keep borrowing your question, because I also really want to get through this stuff. As a mom now, what do you think you've carried most with you in motherhood from your life, good or bad?
Ooh. What have I carried? I just want to ask my kids, what are the really... No, I just have one here anyway. I think what I've done well is I've been really introspective, and I've like asked myself, what have I sort of done right? I've always sort of been taking stock. That's something I think I really, if I'm going to congratulate myself, which I am clearly doing that right now, I really am impressed. So I want to brag about this again, because I feel like I really didn't get enough
You're
credit
selling
for
a book.
this.
It's okay. This is all of the stuff we talk about when we do this.
So I write these columns for Vanity Fair, and I had made this. I had been convinced that Kamala Harris was going to win this election. I was so high on my own supply. Like, I was convinced, and I would be backstage, I'd be at MS, and I would say, she's going to win. And people would say to me, no, she's not going to win. The polls have not shown her ahead at all. And I said, no, this is a permission structure. And whatever. I cooked up a whole thing in my head. And on election day, I was on television in the coveted 3 a.m. to 5 a.m. spot.
Oh, that's divine. I'm sorry I missed you.
Nothing better than showing up for work at 1 a.m. And I don't know, 1:30 for hair and makeup, and so you don't fall asleep. And I was going on TV, and it was 3 a.m. So everyone knew how this was going to go. And I saw Rachel Maddow, who is like the really wonderful, nice. And I said, Rachel, maybe there's still and she was like, no. And she said, I said, what are we going to do? Like, how are we going to do this again? And, she said, you're going to get up tomorrow, you're going to go on Morning Joe, and you're going to tell everyone we're going to just do this the way. And it was like, there was something about having written this book and going through this period where I was like going from Sloan Kettering to New York Hospital to this, to that, where I thought, I'm just going to get up tomorrow and I'm just going to do, I'm going to be there for the people that need me, and the privilege of getting to be there for them. So it was actually kind of great, though it was pretty traumatic too. I was pretty upset.
Yeah, it feels like to me, having read the book a couple of times now, that at least you made it to the other side, but then we get a piece of art out of it. And I'm not tossing that around lightly, and not because we're sitting on a stage together, but also I was so invested in you and your sort of orbit. I needed to know you were okay. And like, not thinking of you as like the 14-year-old who really, you should have seen the look on my face.
I love this story so much, by the way. She was like, can I tell it? I was like, you must tell it.
Sometimes, like, do you really need to revisit your adolescence? It's not something I'm down with.
I'll do it. Let's do it.
Thank you for letting me do it.
This is my theory, is that, like, a happy childhood, you're constantly like, I have to get back there. And an unhappy childhood, you just can't get out of. You're just stuck in it. And that was...
But you can make it funny.
Well, you can make it funny, and you can exhaust it in your head, and you can sort of get through it, and you can glean what you can from it.
I mean, I had no idea you were dyslexic until I read this book. And
Oh
I'm
my
like,
God.
how do you Wait, you're a special
dyslexic.
correspondent for Vanity Fair. You're a podcaster, which means you actually have to do research and, think about stuff.
But a lot of stuff is good. Sorry, go on.
You've also written novels.
Yeah.
I mean,
it gets the thing.
How?
I mean, I don't want to say anything nice about technology because I'm really down on it. But it's gotten much better. You can listen to the whole. You can listen to the whole Washington Post.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
Right.
It's become much easier to be a dyslexic in the world. I don't have any dyslexic kids, but I have a first cousin who's also dyslexic.
Mm-hmm.
So I also secretly, whatever. It doesn't matter. I actually think it's kind of my superpower having such a sort of, but I definitely feel, as someone who's been sober a long time, I definitely feel the scrambledness of my brain, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it totally makes sense. Did writing the book give you solace? Someone's 20 pages from the end.
So again, this is the thing. Is writing therapy or is therapy therapy? I actually am sort of down on therapy too. Don't tell me. I think therapy is good. And I was in therapy for a long, long time. And then I kind of just got bored with it. But I definitely think for me, I felt like I put something together that was where I don't know. I found it helpful to me, if that makes sense. I don't know that I got weller as much as I felt like my experience could benefit others. Which is fundamentally the whole goal of everything we're doing on this planet a little bit.
Well, especially if you're writing a book. I mean, we're all bringing our own experience to this. And I mean, the idea being, any book, right, that you put out into the world, the reader meets you wherever they are. And if you're lucky, maybe you get a cool experience out of it. And maybe you get someone saying, not so much for me. And then you've got people who go on the internet and share their feelings. And it's like, oh, hi.
Yeah.
Hi. We're having big feelings today. Okay.
I don't know. I feel like I have definitely been the recipient of people's feelings about things in many different ways.
I've seen some of them on the internet.
So, but again, in the attention economy where attention is the main currency, it could be worse. They could be talking about someone else.
You have built a pretty cool life, though. I mean, you get to do,
granted,
a 1:30 a.m. call time, not my idea of fun.
That was
and I've caught some flights at some weird times, but I don't have to speak. I just have to get through, TSA.
No,
but you built a very amazing life.
I am so lucky, and I really do feel I'm not saying I'm lucky because I think it'll make you guys like me. I actually really feel lucky. I feel because somebody was saying, well, people recognize you, and I'm like, it's so cool. I got some amount of notoriety in my 40s, or in my late 30s. That's amazing.
I love that.
Yeah,
I do love that.
It's not like being a Disney Mouseketeer at 13, and being like, who am I? It's I know who I am. I'm just shocked that anyone cares.
I love seeing. Listen, we're very good at saying 5 under 35. We're very good at saying here are the writers under 20.
Right.
It's not like we have a sell-by date. I mean, experience is experience, right? Bonnie Garmis wrote a best-selling novel in her 60s. And it's more of this, please, right? Why can't we just find our own sort of path and pattern?
Well, and I also think one of the things I was really interested in this book was this experience of being middle-aged in the world.
Yeah.
And what that looked like. Because I just found I had never been a person who particularly connected with my looks. I thought I was fine. But, I got married young, and I just didn't, it didn't occupy a ton of my brain. So I thought, I won't mind getting older because who cares? And then all of a sudden I was like, wait a second. I was like, this was not what and I was like, and every year I get older and older. There's no 1 year where you get to skip. No. There's no 1 year where you all of a sudden look better. It just, and that this trajectory is, I was actually quite shocked.
We also are the product of a generation that spoke about nothing. Obviously.
Well, yeah, I was going to say.
You had a slightly different experience, but
she spoke.
You had other parents that did not, though.
Right? No.
You're sort of walking this line that the rest of us didn't. But there are some things where My grandmother and my mom could have been a little more clear about. Thanks very much. Thanks for not sharing this stories. You
no,
know,
you
no.
don't want
And they
that. No. I'm gonna say as someone who she'd be like, "Should we talk about sex?" And I'd be like, "Please, no."
No, that's not what I was talking.
Yeah.
No, I was talking about boring stuff like mortgages. And
Right. Well, that she also didn't talk to me about. Like I was like
so you just
I absolutely had no. But that's part of being the child of artists and bohemians. Like I just thought I don't think I knew. I thought my dad and I actually shared this experience where he would be like, a good career is being a writer. And I'd be like, yeah, that seems like a good career. Like that seems like a way to make, like nobody, I didn't even know you could be a doctor or like a lawyer. Like, I mean, really, when I was young, I didn't. Yeah, and those are good careers. In case you're wondering.
Well, when you tell your parents you're not going to be a consultant, you're going to go work in a bookstore, you should see their faces.
Yeah,
it's awesome. Highly recommend. Highly recommend. I want to get serious for just a second. The ethics of writing about a parent that is, not all there, right? Everything's fodder when you're a writer, obviously.
Right.
I mean, and you write with great heart and kindness and empathy and all sorts of good things, but you are writing about someone who is essentially, is it fair to say, not there?
I mean, I think the larger ethos of Erica Jong was you can write about anything you want with me. And even in dementia, she still said to the New York Times, I talked to the aide and he was like, she loved the interview. And I was like, I'm sure she did. I was like, so the New York Times is like, we want to know. The journalist, who's very smart, publishing reporter, really great, has interviewed my mom before, really a reader, was like, I want to talk to Erica Jong. And so I called my mom's assistant, figures in this book, and she now is sort of my assistant, but she's sort of still my mom. We have a very codependent relationship. So I said to her, and I gave her the book, and she really liked the book because she's very much Team Erica Jong. So I said, and she's great. I love her. But so I said to the journalist, well, let me give you all the sort of Team Erica Jong people who are really my mom's people, and they'll tell you what they think. So my godmother and this one and that one. And then, this journalist was like, I really want to talk to your mom. And I was like, can she? And I'm thinking to myself, like, she can't sign a check. Should she be talking to a journalist? And then I was like, but it will be really fun for her. She'll be delighted. And, I'm sure I thought, let her do it. So, but the ethics of this is insane. And I mean, this is the thing about when we talk about aging. I mean, this is a complete, the whole situation is like this, right? What is being conscious? What is being culpable? What is, they signed the power of attorney, my mother and stepfather, to me. They were pretty with it, but could they have been, you know what I mean? I don't know. I mean, that is there are all these ethical questions when you talk about taking care of aging parents that are real and sort of nebulous, So the answer is, I wrote about her. I felt like she would have been delighted because really at the end of the day, my mom cared most about her literary legacy. And she would always say to me, I am making you my literary executive. All Mom wanted was to be Joan Didion. She really wanted to be, she didn't want to be Joan Didion was not Joan Didion back then.
Right.
But she wanted to be sort of like Henry Miller. She wanted to be Henry Miller.
She did want to be Henry Miller. Yes, she absolutely wanted to be Henry Miller.
She wanted to be Henry Miller, right? They were friends. They didn't sleep together, she says, okay.
I'm not going to question it. I'm going to go with that version of the story.
I don't even want to know.
I'm going with that version of the story.
But she wanted to be Henry Miller, and she would always say to me, you're my literary executor, my legacy. You have to manage my legacy. So part of me felt like an Erica Jong book, she's on the cover, she looks really good, there are some gorgeous 70s photos of her. We have Taffy writing the Erica Jong movie. This is really what Erica, and every time I see her, I say, I have this book and you're on the cover and Taffy is writing this Erica Jong movie, Taffy Ackner. Taffy has best-selling books. She's very smart. She writes for the Times. This one is going to star as, we have an actress who may play her. And this actress said, I'm going to play Erica Jong. This is what, when you're this is like the dream. So, so part of me feels like, as maybe you don't know, but I know.
All right, let's put it this way. On a literary plane, yeah, I get it because I read your book. The lizard brain is kind of going, I'm really glad this wasn't me. I'm really glad. I'm not sure I had. I mean, parents are just so complicated. I mean, right?
And they are and they're not. I mean, I don't know. I feel like I get Erica Chong. And by the way, if my kids want to write about me, like, all good. I don't know. I don't, that was not, like, and I also felt like I did this book in a way where I was careful with my kids.
Yeah.
And I was careful with people who were not public figures. And I was not so careful with Kellyanne Conway. I thought I was careful with everyone. And I felt that Mom had sort of signed off on it.
More than one person is asking sort of this idea of you as bad daughter.
Yes.
Right? Like,
well, that's why I want.
Are you really a bad, like, I don't feel like, I mean, there are a couple of reviews where they've been talking about literary retribution. And I'm like, is it retribution if you're telling the truth? Like, what?
I mean, I don't know.
Bad daughter? What? Like, this is all weird and judgy.
I don't care. I mean, I honestly, like, I'm delighted. I was like, oh, literary retribution, that's not good. And then I was like, oh, look at the picture. I was like, oh, it's so big.
It's a good, yeah,
right.
Good
and
picture.
then I was like, complaining to a friend of mine, and she was like, it's leading the site. And I was like, oh, okay, leading the site. Well, that's pretty good. All right. So, attention economy, I think, like, I'm quite lucky, which, quite frankly.
Yeah, but you also have a level of self-awareness that I think certainly comes from being sober, but also comes from being a person in the world in a different way. I mean, we get the parents we get, right? But, like, you sort of learn to model yourself. Like, you had other adults around you.
I had Susan Cheever, who's not here right now, but she exists, was very helpful to me. And I had some good adults around me, for sure.
And, I mean, you grow up noticing everything, right? Because you are that kid and you're around the adults where the adults are kind of fascinating, but of course you're totally watching what they're doing. And maybe you don't want to live like that, but maybe there's a point. And just figuring out that balance, right? Like, where do you go, right? Yeah. College was not your thing. How many schools did you go to before you were like, peace out, I got to go do something else?
But all my kids have to go to college. Right. Every single one.
Right. But they are, right? You were in the process with the youngers figuring that out.
Yeah, they're going to go to college.
College, actually, I will say, I had a really good time at college.
No, college is really fun.
I had an insanely good time.
I would go to college now.
You will never. Do you not sleep now? I guess if you don't sleep now, then it's fine.
I got up this morning at 4:30, and I was like, "Oh no, this is not good." But yes, I try to sleep. I try really hard to sleep.
Listen, we got to take what we can when we can find it.
But yes,
4:30 in the morning. I mean, when I'm on the West Coast, I keep New York hours, so I will get up at horrific hours, and it's still dark out. But
this was just anxiety. I got up and I was like, "Oh no, this is not good." But yeah, I mean, this. I'm a little keyed up. But
I mean, how does it feel to have this out in the world? You've been living with this book for a couple of years. Your entire family's been living with this book.
You know what? I'm happy. I'm really happy. Like, it got really good reviews, which I'm shocked by. I'm sorry, I shouldn't say that.
Really?
But yes. Because I knew the book was good because one of my friends was like, all of our meanest friends still admit this book is good. He said, they would be really happy if it wasn't good. And they all said it's good. So he's like, so you really, it's actually good. But I still, getting good reviews, it's very cool. Yeah. And I feel like, I have a lot of anxiety because I really want it to sell well. But I also feel like I think I wrote something that's very useful to people, that is fun to read, and also has somehow gotten good reviews. And that's all I can do. I can't control whether or not people buy it. But if you want to buy it.
Well, we have a plan for you.
It's very pretty.
We have a plan for you.
Oh,
so
good.
Let the booksellers worry about the sales part. Let us worry about that.
But I have to say, the booksellers have said amazing things about this book. And that has been very cool because these guys really know their stuff.
This is kind of what we do.
Yeah.
I mean, So what healing methods have helped you be so objective and aware of dynamics between you and your mom and and within yourself?
Well, I got sober when I was 19. I am sober. I talk about it all the time because I think it's really important to destigmatize alcoholism. It's genetic disease. You can get sober. You don't have to be ashamed. It's, there's
not
a whole
moral failing.
Right, not a moral failing. There's a whole world out there of sober people. Welcome. So that's number one. And then I would also say one of the great things that, I definitely did my time in therapy. When things get really bad, and in this book, I talk about this. When things got really bad, I would get ice cream, a lot of ice cream. And also I would go to bed at like 8:30. And that was like the greatest thing. Like I'd be like, I'm going to get in bed get in my pajamas like 6:40. I would be in bed by 7. I would be like, what? Like I'd be asleep by 8:20 or something, And when you have like 9 hours of sleep, it's like incredible. Like anything can happen. If you have 9 hours of sleep, it's magic. So that was another thing that was really helpful for me. But I also was like, there were two things. My husband and I would look at each other and we'd say like, the only way through is through.
Right.
Right. Like there's only one way through this and we're going to get through it. And then the other thing that was really helpful was that we would just be like, we're just going to get through this little bit. We're not going to worry about, if the treatment works. We're not going to worry about if you need more surgery. We're not going to worry about, like, he had this met on his liver that we went to this special radiologist and she said, I don't know if I'm going to get the Met. I don't know if the Met has been here forever. It was a whole question of like, has the Met been here for 20 years and is the cancer just not doing anything?
Right.
Or is the Met new and sign that you're going to, that your body's going to be riddled with cancer in 3 weeks? And we just had to like trust that the Met was just what it was.
All right. So
Sorry.
No. If you're living, I was really invested in Matt's scans.
Yeah.
But if you're living in the moment like that, right, which is not actually an easy thing to do, right? Like we sell lots of books about living in the moment. Not an easy thing to do. No. And yet are you taking notes for the book while you're like, how is this all coming together?
I would come home and I would be sometimes so upset that the only thing I could do was write.
Got it.
And I actually really hate writing. Like I'm one of those people. Yes, I really hate writing. Like I love going on television. Like you sit there, they put the makeup on, you're on for like 5 minutes. It's totally, you just don't move too much. Try not to stare at yourself. It's like, don't try not to say something insane. It's not so hard. But like writing, especially writing a book, it's like, oh my God, it's the most important and meaningful and difficult.
Right.
And even my columns, like I sit down, I'm like a Sunday, I write my column on Sunday nights. I didn't write this week. And my editor was like, please don't write. I have so much work everywhere. He was like, please don't. He was like, you have this book coming out. Just take a break. But I usually write on Sundays. So Sundays, I'm like, oh, I have to write my column. Oh, my God, my column. I'd be like, it's 3:00. I only have 7 hours to write my column, And sometimes I get up at 4 to write my column. And I don't know, writing is like my main thing.
Right.
That's where I get all my self-esteem, which is why we all have a lot of problems. But
Wait, what? No, go back for a second.
But writing is just the thing I have the biggest relationship with.
There are easier ways to make a living, yes.
Right, that's true.
But I will say, coming back to this book, because it really is all about this book, there is so much wonder and love and empathy. Like you have a really big heart that you're like trying to stick in a box over here. The Bostonian is calling you out for having a big heart.
Thank you.
We do recognize them in other people. Okay, despite your best intentions, what's the one thing you find doing or saying as a parent that reminds you of your mama?
Oh, everything. Okay. One of my kids loves to make fun of me. He's like, you're like Grandma Erica. One of my kids will call me on the phone and go, hello, like Grandma Erica. My other kid, my other son will be like, you look just like Grandma. He's like, that's a grandma look. That's a grandma outfit. I think is that Grandma's? So yeah, everything, right? Isn't that
I mean, it's wild looking at photos of you and your mom where I'm just like, oh.
But she was very teeny.
Yeah, well, that I
she's very
remember,
teeny.
but your face, like your
It's
bone
the
structure,
same.
it's like,
Yeah.
oh, DNA,
Yeah.
man.
But she would always, one of my favorite things about my mom was she would say, I am 5'3", and I'd be like, wow, she seems really short for 5'3".
But wasn't she like 5'1"?
She was 5'2".
Okay,
But
my bad.
But she'd be like, yes, I'm 5'3". So I'm always like, I'm 5'7" and a half. I'm 5'6" and a half. And I'd be like, so lying about your height was always
Martha McPhee reviewed you in the Washington Post, and y'all know who Martha's dad is, right? John McPhee, the essayist, right? Okay.
Yeah.
And I interviewed Nick Harkaway sometime last year, and you might know his dad's original last name, which is Cornwall. You guys share a publisher. His dad's pen name was Le Carré.
Yeah.
And
that's right. Yeah.
you know, both of them sort of grew up in similar circumstances where there was a certain level of fame, right? Like McPhee was
nepo baby.
okay. Nepo baby.
Nepo baby. It's okay. It's not.
I don't have a problem with I've met some great nepo babies, and then I've met some nepo babies where I'm like,
Yeah.
okay.
It's funny because I'm friends with another nepo baby, and we're trying to figure out who is the greatest, like the best nepo. If you had if you could be a nepo baby, who do you want to be? And it is Tracy Ellen Ross.
Oh yeah,
That's the best one.
Yeah,
because nobody even knows her mom is Diana Ross. Mm-hmm. She's so beautiful. She's really cool. So that's the best one. And
also just really smart.
She's smart. She's like very hardworking. Someone was telling me a story like she was a intern at Saturday Night Live or something, and she was like a great intern, and everyone loved her. So that's the best nepo baby. And then we're all just working up to that.
Did you ever do the internship thing?
I interned at an art gallery.
Okay.
Yes.
So you still found your way back to...
I mean, whatever. I mean, I had no choice. I was... But it's funny because I've always said to my kids, like, don't ever be a writer. It's the worst thing. Like, just be a banker. I'm always like, be a banker or a doctor or a lawyer.
Okay.
And one of my kids came to me and she's like, I'm so sorry. And I was like, it's fine. You can't do anything. If you have it, it's like...
There's no going back. Yeah.
It's like a food allergy. If you have it, there's nothing you can do. Like, you can try, but in the end, you don't want to eat the thing. You're going to have to just go on. Food allergy is not a great example. As I'm talking this through, I realize this is not a good example.
Yeah, but it's funny.
Yeah. It's like having a birthmark. Like, you're just,
It's there or it's not.
Yeah, there's nothing you can do.
I mean, I'm always kind of fascinated.
Actually, there's stuff you can do for a birthmark. Never mind.
There is now.
Yeah.
But it's expensive.
That's right. Okay.
So maybe you're just going to slap a Band-Aid on it.
That's right.
But I'm also thinking about kids that I meet who are just like, I want to be a writer. And then you ask them who they read, and they're like, read? I'm like, oh. Wait, and there are people using AI to write their text messages, and I'm like, really? Really? You don't even have to use punctuation in a text. Like, I'm the queen of typos, and people can translate my texts.
It's true.
I don't really need AI to do that for me. And I'm thinking, well, writing is learning how to think. Writing opens up this whole kind of weird universe, even if you don't do it for an audience, right? Like, although I do still really like writing shelf talkers, which is a skill set that really no one needs.
Wait,
Except it's the copy that you see sitting under a book.
That's really
And what's
cool.
really fun is when you get to do it for a book you really don't care for. And the game is to make sure that no one knows that you don't like that book.
Wait, so how do you?
So you write a lot of copy.
Right.
And you let the first 4 versions go into the trash.
Okay.
And then you end up with something where you're like, I just sold that book to the person who needs it because they have no idea that I had that book airborne in my living room. And that's all that matters.
Do you finish bad books?
I do sometimes because of work. When I'm reading just for me as a human, absolutely not.
Right.
But there are times where I'm like, hey, I'm having lunch with someone later this week and I will finish this book. I read frighteningly fast. So for me, actually, I can grind through 500 pages in a matter of hours.
Wow.
Could not do my job if I could not read like that. That's really the thing I learned in college was how to cram effectively.
Yeah,
it's great.
That's amazing.
There are people at the back of this room who can they've seen me do this at a lunch where I'm like, da, 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 and then it all falls out of my head later.
Yeah. That's okay.
Feminism, though. And you sort of alluded to this at the top of the show. Your mom, second wave feminism was you can see when you read anything from that
Yeah.
period, whether it's fiction, magazine articles, essays, whatever, because the internet was not a thing. Watching people figure out what feminism meant to them, I feel like we're back there again. I'm like, why didn't we have this conversation already? Like, I feel like this was, wait, what is happening?
So here's what I would say. There's a book called Backlash by Susan Faludi. I'm sure everyone in this room has read it. And it is, if you read it now, it's amazing. Like, you're like, oh, wow. And there are certain things in that book that are still, you know, one of the things she does in that book is she's very mad about certain things. Like, she's very mad about people having kids young, which I have kids young, so I think it's fine. But you can tell she feels like society pressures women to have kids young, which they do. But there's a lot of stuff, you know, like she's very mad at women's magazines. She's very mad at advertisers. So now here we are in this world where women's magazines are like nothing, right?
Yeah, they don't exist. They
right.
used to be, you know, the advertising used to be like this, and now you're like,
they account for zero.
Yeah.
And advertisers, yes, but not really, right? It's this algorithm. It's a whole other thing. But this misogyny is still about the same. Yeah. So it sort of undermines the thesis in an interesting way, but also it just shows sort of how entrenched a lot of that stuff is, which I thought was very interesting. Look, I think that what I would say about feminism is what I think we forget when we don't pull back and look at this sort of 20,000 foot view is that so much of this is like 2 steps forward, 1 step back. And that's sort of how we got to Trump 2.0, and that's how we've gotten to a lot of places. And I think that if we sort of have faith that the you know, the arc of the universe bends towards justice, it does in fact, you know, but it takes a long time, and it doesn't you know, and it hasn't really. We have never been this multiracial democracy that we want to be.
Hope is a muscle. That's what I keep reminding myself. It is like, it's a thing you have to do, right? Like there's this idea that reading is a passive act, and it's like, well, actually, there's a whole lot of muscle that we need to keep going. I like the idea, though, that this book is going to help men and women and whoever build muscle, right? Like grief is hard. We don't talk about grief. We haven't talked about the grief in the last 5 years. I mean, culturally, we had a massive moment. And, you know, if someone can take the humor and suddenly go, oh, wait a minute, I'm the person who laughs at funerals. I'm so sorry. It just, I can't. I do it. I make jokes at funerals.
I think the way we sort of kept from going completely insane during that year was finding it hilarious. And I think that is a sort of good template for going through all of this, you know, stuff that we're in right now, which is pretty bad.
What was that you and your husband were saying to each other? The only way through is through?
Yeah.
The only way through is through. But George Hahn is going to add a little comedy here. Cake or pie?
Cake or pie? That
or
is
both.
A good George Hahn question. I don't like pie.
Really?
It's a fruit. What are we doing? I don't want fruit. Like, we're going to have dessert. I'm not going to have fruit. Like, who has it? We're going to, let's have the fruit plate for dessert.
Oh, no. Clearly you do not have elderly Asian relatives. Anyone who has done, Chinese grandma dessert? Yeah.
I'm not having the fruit plate.
Then more pie for me.
A big piece of cake with a lot of frosting.
Okay, fair enough. New Yorkers want to know, although this is going out over the internet and out into the world, are you going to primary Nadler?
Yes, definitely.
Okay.
Definitely. No, I don't know. Maybe. I've been trying to get someone else to run, but she's not that interested. So if I can bully her into running, then no. And if I can't, then maybe. I don't know. Maybe. No. Yes. I don't know. Maybe. I don't have to decide yet.
I'm perfect.
Don't tell Nadler. He seems like you. I mean, look, again, maybe. I don't know.
Listen, he used to be my congressman downtown, and then he absconded for uptown. So
I mean, look, he's the congressman of the Upper West and Upper East Side, and it is I think, okay, are you ready for my hottest political take? If Democrats were running in 2024 that democracy was under attack and it was an emergency,
Right.
then they must behave like it is an emergency.
That would be my preference.
Yeah, and that means not elevating their friends, but elevating the most effective communicators. Right. And so the question is this the moment where, so I don't know. So the answer is maybe. No. Okay.
Well, I mean,
all right.
if you come downtown, my congressional district includes the East River.
But you have Dan Goldman.
I do, but East River is still in my congressional.
Yeah,
I think
Dan
that's a little
Goldman
weird.
Dan Goldman is
he's doing the thing.
He's
doing the thing,
yeah.
but the river is in my I mean,
yeah, I know.
It seems weird. I don't know. All right, more importantly, we could keep going, and I have a million more questions that, I would like to ask, but we also have to do a book signing.
Yes.
Because I want all of you to have time.
Yes.
With the one and only Molly Jong-Fast. Thank you so much for joining us on
Port
Over. Thank you, New York. You've been a great audience.
Thank you for listening. Poured Over is a Barnes & Noble production. To help other readers find us, please rate and review the show wherever you listen to podcasts.